What's good, Internet? My name is Attack Slug, and welcome to Blackbird on the Nintendo Switch, also available on the PC. It is a wonderfully weird side-scrolling shoot-'em-up from the folks at Onion Games, who brought you Danny Dungeon and Million Onion Hotel. It is also delightfully dark, and has a very Tim Burton-esque kind of vibe to it, very just messed up, but you just can't look away. And so basically, there was a little girl here, and she died, and nobody cared. And then a vengeful crow spirit of some kind, takes her over, and we begin the game as the titular Blackbird, and the screen scrolls, and you can shoot. And that's kind of your core controls here, is shoot, bomb. I mean, it's pretty much the same basic stuff you would get from this genre of game. Your hitbox is the eyeball of the bird. So, rest of the bird can get hit, be fine, but that yellow eyeball cannot get hit without taking damage. You have, a number of health pips here to deal with. And so basically, because the screen scrolls and wraps around, on the bottom you can see there are different targets there. So when those targets are done, when they are dead, then the boss will appear. Now then, enemies will keep spawning, and it has this weird kind of operatic soundtrack to it. And the enemies will oftentimes spawn in with the soundtrack. Now, you can go as fast as you want in terms of taking out these bases and these enemies and whatever, but if you want that high score, and this obviously is a high score style game, if you want that high score, you're going to be hanging around as long as you can in these stages. Eventually, it does kind of kick you out. Got hit there. Eventually, it does kind of kick you out. And playing and talking at the same time is a problem because it's a game that requires concentration, and clearly not my forte. But yes, it does have a limit, because the enemies will keep spawning, right? So you would think, alright, I'm going to play forever, but no, you can't play forever. And you get various power-ups, and, things that are intrinsic to this kind of genre. You got a combo beater up in the upper right-hand corner, and obviously you're going for a high score, but I have not beaten this game yet. It's only 4 stages, so a full playthrough, not super long, as such. But when you beat it, now I haven't beaten it yet, when you beat it, you unlock the true mode, right? And when you have the true mode, then there are multiple endings and that whole thing, right? So there is incentive to keep on playing the game. I'm gonna do a bomb here. There is incentive to keep on playing, beyond just getting the high score, which also, is that kind of game, because it's a shmup. So, the more damage you do, you're going to upgrade your bird here, and there are pickups to get that will upgrade your speed, your bombs, your health, that kind of thing. But in the early goings of the game, you want to just kind of keep on murdering everybody here that was ignoring your death and, getting your vengeance as such, right? So, you'll keep on doing that, and they'll keep on spawning with the music, and hopefully you'll, get more health pickups and that kind of thing. Now, I've made it up to that final boss a couple times, which that final boss is not a cakewalk. It is the hardest thing in the game, as it should be, as a final boss, and it has been quite rough. So eventually I'll get it, man. I'll get those patterns down and beat that last boss, but it has not happened just yet. But I'm going to show you here kind of the general strategy is that you're going to hang out and just do this kind of stuff with one of these things left, with one of these towers left, right? Because eventually it'll count down, and then there'll be an appearance here, but we're not quite there yet. Now, there are different things in the stage here. You can see that windmill thing up there. You shoot that, you get points. Like, there are different things to interact with in these stages to give you more points. And obviously, as a high points game, that's kind of your goal, is get as many points as possible. So, all these guys murdered is certainly in your best interest, but I'm going to avoid that last tower until the game forces me to not avoid that last tower, because, points, man. Points. Give me, yes, see that? Give me what's in there. Give me the points. I want all these gems. Give me all that green. I need that green. That hocus pocus focus gems. Okay, so there's beeping now, right? There's beeping? And the beeping means, alright, it's almost time for this thing to appear. Now, this is the actual head of the final boss, right? So, when this thing appears, you can't kill it, and therefore, you need to, A, run away, much like, say, the ghost in Spelunky, and then hit that final thing to get that first boss to actually appear, etc., etc. And here we go. It's first boss time. So, mechanically, this plays like you would want it to play for this genre of game, but it's the art style, it's the charm, it's the Onion Games, Onion Time type stuff, which is where the appeal lies, because they make these just delightfully, wonderfully weird video games with just very charming art, and, you know, just a lot of guys who worked for companies that made weird games in the past, and you guys know that I love playing just these very small, weird games because they have a much more directed type feel. Like, it feels more personal than your big AAA game that's not very, you know, like, a bunch of people worked on it and that whole thing. When you have such a small team, you get a much more personal story and a much more direct, or what's the word I'm looking for? A much clearer vision for what the game should be, whether that be good or bad. It's a much more clear vision, whereas obviously AAA games get bogged down in AAA stuff, and shareholders, stockholders, bean counters, you know, appealing to everybody. Games don't have to appeal to everybody, as long as they're good games. And so I tend to gravitate toward the more weird, small indie games from Japan and otherwise, because they have kind of a more personal feel to them. They have a much more clear vision of what they want it to be, and that kind of thing. So, much enjoying games like this on the Switch and on the PC, and hoping they do well. This came out back in October, November, something like that. I got it on sale on the Switch last month. But I have been a big fan of Onion Games since they kind of started making games, which was not that long ago, to be honest. And there we go. First stage complete, got our bonus, got our score result. And yeah, the stage is not super long, so the game itself, if you're playing through a single playthrough, not super long, but it's a high score game. So what's the highest score you can get in the game is kind of the crux of what this is and why you should play it, to be honest. And then you get more story in between the stages. So this kind of black mass of goo meets the little girl who died, and then you move on. And you're moving from the lower income areas into the higher income areas. That's what it seems like. There's more technology and such as you move throughout these areas. So you're kind of going eventually after the aristocrats and, you know, that kind of thing. Eat the rich, etc., etc. There is kind of a message here to be had if you are going to actually sit there and look for it. But otherwise, just gameplay-wise, it's a great game. Like, it controls well, and it feels good, and there is a combo system in place to exploit, and that is kind of, you know, what this genre is built on, is getting your high score and doing fun things while doing it. Or, so, I don't know. At this point, I'm out of words, so we're gonna do one more stage here, and then wrap things up. But you get the idea. Like, it's very clear, more or less, what they're doing here, gameplay-wise, from the beginning. It's in the finer and weirder details as you get deeper into what these things do, the systems and the combos and the story. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like once you actually get the true ending, or the true mode, and then the multiple endings and that kind of thing. I want to know. I don't know if I'm actually good enough to actually get there on, you know, how I play games. Like, I played a fair amount of Million Onion Hotel and got some stuff done, some stuff unlocked, but man, there was a lot of it, and that game does get rather tricky. So there are some deep gameplay mechanics contained within Blackbird. And it's kind of up to you whether or not you want to engage with them. The bird does grow, which means that the eye does grow, which means that your hitbox does grow. So there is kind of a push and pull. These guys here, the asparagus from Million Onion Hotel, are here. And they give you extra points when you shoot them, so that's always fun. Plenty of bombs here. I guess kind of wait for a bunch of guys to spawn and kind of just do that. Make that bomb thing happen. Not a great combo, but, you know, a combo nonetheless. So eventually we get our thing here, which is our timer. It's like, you know what? It's time to go. It's time to go. And there will be, you know, heftier enemies here that will spawn that give you more points when you kill them. But if you aren't making a combo happen, then what are you even doing, you know? The combo is the crux of your high score in any game that has a high score. Get that combo. Make it happen. Anyway. More onion time. Onion time! It's always onion time. There it is. It's beeping. It's beeping. So we'll just do it now. Sorry, buddy. You ain't doing nothing to me. Nothing for nobody. Peace out. And then the sirens. And here comes this giant robotic chicken thing. Because, man, Onion Games has some really cool character design on their enemies. And I like it a lot. Anyway, Blackbird is out now on the Switch and the PC. It's $20. And I think it is definitely worth playing if you like weird and wacky indie games with perhaps a dark story behind them and a variety of endings to unlock if you're good enough at the game, which I am not quite there just yet. That last boss is some serious business. Anyway, if you're like me and you have to practice that last boss over and over again, there is a mode to practice before stages and before bosses, and then obviously a ranking here on the internet. My current high score, which is 8 million, is in the top 2,000 of high scores. And there's a lot of Japanese names here in the high score list. So I think more folks in America and the rest of the world should know Blackbird's a great game, and they should play it. I'm Attack Slug. More videos. I'll see you next time, right here on this channel, and I'm out.